When Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the plan in Moscow appeared simple. Armor would advance, aircraft would dominate the skies, and the campaign would conclude quickly. The Kremlin framed it as a controlled operation with limited costs and clear rewards. What followed instead has become one of the most prolonged and costly military confrontations in modern Europe, and the price continues to rise. Tonight's story is not about headlines or rhetoric. It is about numbers, patterns, and consequences. And those numbers suggest something the Kremlin did not anticipate. By late 2024, the war had settled into a cycle of constant engagements, advances, and withdrawals, and repeated strikes along an extended front. Progress came in meters, sometimes kilometers, but rarely without significant losses. In December, Ukraine released new assessments that reignited attention on a question many analysts have been tracking for months. How sustainable is Russia's current approach? On December 16th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the Parliament of the Netherlands. While discussing the broader war effort, he cited estimates that immediately drew international focus. According to Zelensky, Russian forces are experiencing losses at a scale measured in tens of thousands each month. Not cumulative figures over years, but sustained monthly attrition. If accurate, these numbers point to an extraordinary rate of manpower depletion. Analysts emphasize that such figures would not represent wounded personnel who later return to duty, but permanent losses that reduce available force strength. Even for a state with significant population depth, replacing that level of attrition consistently is a structural challenge. Reports from October and November suggest that these losses may already exceed previous monthly records since the invasion began. Independent outlets note that drone footage, battlefield assessments, and open-source tracking increasingly align with a picture of intense pressure on Russian frontline units. What makes this period different is not a single breakthrough, but a shift in method. Ukraine has expanded the role of long-range drones, reconnaissance, and precision targeting. Rather than focusing solely on territory, operations increasingly aim at systems, radars, vehicles, logistics nodes, and command infrastructure. Equipment destroyed matters not just for its price tag, but for the operational gaps it creates. When systems are lost, coordination slows, coverage narrows, and response times stretch. One development drawing attention is Ukraine's use of structured incentives within its drone units. According to multiple reports, Ukrainian forces have introduced a performance-based system that tracks confirmed outcomes from drone operations. The intent is not spectacle, but efficiency, prioritizing accuracy, verification, and coordination across units. Officials describe it as a tool to improve effectiveness, not a replacement for strategy. Whether one views this approach as innovation or necessity, its impact is difficult to ignore. The frequency of successful drone engagements has increased, and Russian units have been forced to adapt, often under pressure. Still, analysts caution against simplifying the explanation. High losses are not driven by Ukrainian tactics alone. Russia's broader military doctrine plays a role. For decades, Russian planning has emphasized attrition, absorbing losses in exchange for gradual progress. In Ukraine, that doctrine has been applied across a wide front, often relying on massed assaults to test defenses and exhaust the opponent. This approach can produce movement on the map, but it carries a cost. Several Russian commentators and former officials have acknowledged that many frontline units are composed of older reservists, contract soldiers from economically disadvantaged regions, and volunteers attracted by financial incentives. Over time, recruitment has grown more difficult. Reports indicate that signing bonuses have been reduced in some regions, and Russia has increasingly turned to foreign nationals to fill gaps. At the same time, equipment losses have mounted. Vehicles, artillery systems, and air defense assets destroyed over months of fighting require time and resources to replace. Even when replacements arrive, training and integration lag behind operational demands. Territorial gains during recent periods illustrate the imbalance. In some cases, Russia advanced across limited areas while sustaining losses that analysts describe as disproportionate to the ground secured. The question raised by several defense institutes is not whether Russia can continue fighting, but whether it can continue fighting this way. International pressure adds another layer. European governments continue to debate how to handle frozen Russian assets, with proposals ranging from long-term immobilization to loan mechanisms benefiting Ukraine. Moscow has responded with legal threats and countermeasures, underscoring how financial constraints increasingly shape strategic decisions. All of this points to a broader reality. Modern warfare is not decided solely by momentum or messaging. It is shaped by sustainability of manpower, equipment, and economic capacity. Attrition cuts both ways, but it does not affect all sides equally. As the conflict enters another year, the battlefield remains fluid. Advances are met with withdrawals. Strikes prompt adaptations. Losses reshape planning on both sides. No single statistic tells the full story, but together, the patterns suggest a war far removed from the assumptions made in early 2022. What happens next will depend not just on what each side gains, but on what each side can afford to lose. Beyond the battlefield figures, there is a quieter shift taking place. One that is harder to quantify, but increasingly visible. Russian commanders are being forced to rotate units more frequently, redistribute equipment across wider sectors, and prioritize defense in areas once considered stable. These adjustments signal strain rather than flexibility. Each redeployment carries trade-offs: reduced pressure in one area to stabilize another, delayed operations while logistics catch up, and growing uncertainty about where the next engagement may emerge. Meanwhile, Ukraine's approach continues to emphasize timing over territory, focusing on moments when defense is thin or coordination falters. This creates a rhythm of pressure rather than a single decisive blow. For military planners watching closely, the lesson is familiar but unforgiving. Wars are not only won by advances, but by the ability to endure repeated shocks without losing cohesion. Stay focused, stay informed. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications now, because the next developments are already unfolding and you won't want to miss what comes next.